Gear Patrol just called their ISO-certified dive watch the best sub-$500 dive watch. Full stop. And their ceramic watch material almost magical. The Wall Street Journal called them iconoclastic cool, potentially redefining the industry itself. Who are we talking about? It's Movement. And they're leveling up your gift giving with the biggest deals of the holiday season and the sleekest watches around. Shop 30 to 60% off Movement's variety of designs, colorways, and functionalities. From the thinnest automatic dress watch under $500 to waterproof guarantee adventure-ready sport watches to rare ceramics, Movement's got options for everyone on your list. Whether you're gifting for family, friends, or yourself, be the good gifter this year with Movement's huge site-wide holiday sales and enjoy the usual fast and free shipping. Shop 30 to 60% off now at movement.com. That's MVMT.com.
You know who you are? Steven is my name. Even Steven.
Will you say something, Steven?
Steven or Else Media.
You're listening to the Superman Super Show, Episode 10, Wanted, Superman. Hello, and welcome to an all-new episode of the Superman Super Show. I'm a host. My name is Ed, and 1,000 miles over there to my right is another host, Mr. Steven. Steven, say hi.
Howdy, y'all.
And I should have inserted my hi, but I didn't. So, hi. And not to take Steven's thunder, but I'll say hi too. Today we're looking at Wanted, Superman, which appears in Action Comics number 9, written by Jerry Siegel, penciled by Joe Shuster and Wayne Boring, inked by Joe Shuster and Wayne Boring and/or lettered by Paul Loretta, and edited by Vincent Sullivan. Now, the pencilers moving forward, I think, and the inkers are going to be a little, because there's ghosting and there's help and there's all these other issues that may pop up, particularly at this time of comic book creation. So,
Yep.
Joe Shuster typically penciled and inked, but he may not do all of it. There may be another person or two people in some instances that I've seen. So
Right.
Moving forward, that's what we're going to run into. Jerry Siegel pretty much is a stay, but Joe Shuster maybe with some help and things moving forward. So Action Comics number 9 was published by DC Comics, and it has a cover date of February 1939. The approximate sale date is thought to be January 3rd, 1939, and that comes to us by way of Mike'sAmazingWorld.com with an assist from the Superman Radio Revisited show, which is a podcast that explores the Superman radio serial, and it can be found on Twitter at Radio Superman. Now, here's what happened in Superman's story Wanted in Action number 9. He is still wanted by the police. Let me jump in here and say, too, I think this is the first actual continuation of a story that we've gotten from the previous issue.
Pretty much.
So he is still wanted by the police for destroying all of those slum tenements, and the police chief is furious. He's hired Detective Captain 100% Riley from Chicago to help apprehend Superman. Back at the Daily Star office, Clark Kent asks Lois Lane out on a date. She reminds him that she finds him contemptible. He tells her that he knows that she's got someone else she's thinking of, and she admits that she's in love with Superman. Detective Captain Riley comes up with a plan to catch Superman. He promises a $5,000 reward to whoever helps capture and arrest Superman. As Superman is helping to stop a mental patient named Saunders from committing suicide, he's noticed by Mortimer Snoop, a small-time crook who read about the reward for his capture. Snoop calls the police and tells them that he saw a man remove his clothes and then jump up into the sky. Detective Captain Riley hurries to the spot where the clothes are. He and Snoop wait in that spot for Superman to return so that they can catch him. Superman saves the mental patient, then returns to where he left his clothes. Snoop and Riley get into an argument and separate, giving Superman time to collect his clothes. As Riley chases Snoop, Snoop hides in an alley and reads the memo he pulled out of Superman's coat pocket. Snoop makes his way to the address listed on the memo, but is refused entry to the party happening there. He calls the Daily Star and asks to speak with the society editor, but instead is put on with Lois Lane. He tells her that he knows Superman is going to be at a party and needs help getting inside. Lois makes her way over to the party, but double-crosses Snoop so that he gets thrown out. In a last resort, Snoop calls Riley. Riley heads over to the party, and he and Snoop start looking for Superman. In the meantime, Lois Lane asks Clark Kent to help her find Superman so that she can warn him of the danger. Riley decides to line everyone up against the wall and shoots them. No, I'm kidding. And search them. Just as he's about to search Clark Kent, he lets it slip that he has no intention of giving Snoop any of the money. In anger, Snoop turns off the light. When Riley turns the light back on, he is face-to-face with Superman. Both Riley and Snoop jump on Superman to try to catch him, but they only succeed in injuring themselves. Disgraced, Riley returns to Chicago, as Lois Lane once again daydreams about Superman. So, Steven, what did you think about all of that?
Boy. First off, was I the only one who, as I'm reading this, the first time we encounter this character by the name of Snoop, who, by the way, this is Mortimer Snoop's only appearance. Eventually, as the story goes on, I keep reading the name Snoop, and it goes in my head from being, like, you're such a Snoop, to being Snoop D-double-O-G.
Yeah.
Or
Snoop on
D-O-double-G. Yeah, I started thinking of Snoop Dogg through every time they would say Snoop, and that was kind of funny. But the whole fact that Captain Riley, 100% Riley, who, again, also his only appearance ever, he decides to put this bounty on Superman, this reward, and he says himself in panel number 17, when first he calls in panel 16, he calls the newspaper to tell them about the $5,000 reward to give to the person who helps capture and arrest Superman. And then the editor or the other captain's like, "Are you crazy?" He goes, "Now take it easy, Chief. You said I could handle this case my own way, didn't you? Well, that's the way I always start off. I see that a large reward is offered for a desperado's capture, then I collect it myself." What kind of crap is that? He just here's what I'll do, okay? Because just moments before, he's trying to think of what he can. It's like, what can I do? What can I do?
Right, he has no idea. Yeah.
Yeah. How can I start this? And suddenly, action. That word, eureka! I've got an idea. And first of all, then he admits that it's something he does every time anyway. And his plan ultimately isn't really a plan. It's just a way for him to make money. Mm-hmm. It's like that. That's a crooked cop if I've ever seen one. And I find it funny. And when he bullies up to Clark at one point, when he's standing up in front of the news people, and he's like, "I'm gonna get my man. I always get my man every time." And Clark's like, "Oh boy, this guy's a big blowhard," and he just gets all up in Clark's face. And Clark, of course, backs down. This was kind of this issue was more silly than anything. I was honestly hoping for something more because of the whole Superman is now a wanted man. He's wanted by the government. I mean, he went up against the National Guard in the previous issue. They were shooting at him and dropping bombs on him. And that doesn't at all escalate. It just goes from there to some out-of-town cop coming in and just trying to catch Superman unaware so that he can arrest him. I don't know. I liked it. I just thought it was really silly. And the back and forth between Snoop and O'Reilly, as I'm the one that found him, so I should get the $5,000. Well, of course I'll share the $5,000 with you. I'm not going to share that $5,000 with him. And that it was kind of funny. And then Lois, who she's in love with Superman, and so she gets into that party. She uses O'Reilly to get into the party, but then gets in just to find Superman, to warn him. And yeah, it was a fun time.
A little bit different feel because of Snoop and Riley. And yeah, this felt a lot more to me like a radio serial.
Yeah.
Where you you can't see what's going on. So verbally, they really have to up the game to set the scene and make the pictures for you.
Yeah.
And so if you can imagine yourself not looking at this, but hearing these text boxes and narrations and things, it struck me a lot more like a radio serial that has been adapted to this particular format than any of the other things that we've read so far about him.
Yep.
And I think,
and we're still.
Go ahead.
No, go ahead.
I think that's to me the reason really was because of how over the top sniveling Snoop was and how over the top Riley was. To make up for the fact that you can't see anything about him, so everything you have is what you hear. And so they were written just so much over the top that I almost want a Riley Snoop series. Oh, that would be something a la like Sam and Twitch from Image Comics. Yeah, that would you send Riley sends Snoop in first to infiltrate, and then they work this thing together. Yeah, that would be quite the plan.
Yep. And we're back to we're still doing the 8-panel grid, but in this issue, many of the panels aren't all the same width. Basically, they're all different lengths. But we still got 2 by 2 by 2 by 2, but they're not all equal.
And they alternate when they're big too. They don't stay all big to the left or all big to the right.
Yeah. Yep.
So what'll happen is you have that margin between them will zigzag.
Yep.
As you go from line to line, I noticed too.
Which feels more like a comic book than just the previous, just the 8-panel grid where every panel was exactly the same size. But yeah, this panels, let's see, what is this? 74 and 75, when Lois needs she uses Snoop to get into the party. And good evening, Miss Lane. Shall I admit this person who persists he knows you? I don't know him and I don't care to.
There you go, boy. Yep.
And guy kicks him out. Oh, that's right, because Snoop calls her because he needs her to get him in.
To get him in. Yeah.
Yeah.
And she's like, when she finds out why, then she wants to be there herself. She doesn't need help and she doesn't need him. So, yeah.
Yeah. I mean, all in all, there's really not a lot going on in this story. It's just a bunch of almost like crazy hijinks. It's kind of a crazy hijinks story.
I don't know that they necessarily meant it to be humorous, but it seems to me to be more humorous probably than any of the previous stories up to this point.
Yeah. And the biggest threat or the biggest concern for Superman at any point during this issue was the moment at the party where O'Reilly or Riley is going to search everybody. Mm-hmm. And Clark knows that when they get to him, the secret's going to be out because he's wearing his Superman costume underneath his tux. But then Snoop, for some reason, just out of anger, turns off the lights, and that allows Clark to quickly dress into Superman. And then that moment where Riley and Snoop both leap at Superman only to conk their heads into his sides.
Right. Yeah. The Man of Steel, for sure.
Yeah. And then they refer to him in the headline the next morning. 99% Riley leaves town in a hurry.
And did I notice, let's see, is this the first time that they had tried to do Superman's symbol in red? I don't have a note. I thought it was still yellow. It was yellow at the beginning of this story, but here, these final panels, it looks like, maybe by mistake or something, they tried to make it red. In 74, you can't really tell. In 75, it looks, or I think that's 90. 94, it looks off. 95, it looks like they tried but missed. And then in 96, it looks like they got the shield yellow and the S red finally.
Yeah. Yeah.
And then in the advert in the bottom right panel, it's the S is red there too. So I think that's the first time we've seen the red S, which I thought I made a note of when that appeared, but I don't see it. Okay.
The Superman Super Show will return after these messages. And now, back to the Superman Super Show.
And speaking of which, it was in issue 7 where Superman's boots throughout the issue were yellow.
Mm-hmm.
And we were kind of wondering about that and if it was part of the original issue. And I'm noticing over here on Twitter, because we just, as we're recording this, we also put up episode number 7 today. And John Reads Comics over at the Twitter. Yeah, he just left a quick comment that says, I can confirm that Superman's boots were yellow in the original of this issue. So,
okay. Yeah, see, that's, and I haven't really made an issue of it, but I'm reading these from the Superman, the Golden Age, the big volumes.
Yeah,
and
me too.
These recolorings, not to put too fine a point on it, but they suck.
Yeah, they can.
I just, and I don't know why they felt that, but just the recoloring didn't work. To me.
Well,
so
I think unfortunately there's an attitude, I think, in some cases where, the way we color now, and it's not just coloring, it's I think people across the board, regardless of what industry they're in, the way we do it now is better. So we're going to improve upon what they tried to do back then. And that doesn't always work.
And see, for me, there's a conflict there. Yes, I will agree that, like, say, movies, okay? Movies now are so much more captivating with the special effects and the CGI and all that. And, but there is something cool about sitting and watching an original print of Star Wars.
Yeah.
I guess it's the nostalgia, maybe almost entirely, I've even seen those, redos of Star Wars where they went back and added special effects for the time back in 2000 or whenever they did that, and I just, even if that is what the original producers and directors, even if that's what they envisioned, but they just weren't able to do it, obviously, particularly with something like Star Wars, there's nothing wrong with how they did do it.
Right.
It would not have been as popular as it was. So
yeah.
These are the same things. What you're doing, to my mind, is you're trying to give these comics to people that have never seen them before. Why change them? There's no point in that. Nowadays, the Action Comics 1,753 that I pick up, no, I don't want to look this way because I know that, but I am reading comics from 1939, 1940. Yep. Give them to me the way that they were. That's as much of what this is as anything.
Yeah, there's something to be said about seeing the progression. This is what they look like then. This is what they look like now. And, it's history. And, the analogy of the movies, there have been plenty of times when I have watched, for example, a movie from the 80s, and I'll see a bit of special effects and I'll think, had they done that nowadays, that wouldn't be a practical effect. It would be, CGI.
Right.
And probably wouldn't look as special.
Okay.
Wouldn't look, it's like I watched the original Ghostbusters the other day, and there are scenes with the with the dogs, the big demon dogs, where it's stop motion, and it's like there are some moments when I'm just like, oh, this did not hold up, and there are some moments that's like, this is pretty awesome. This looks really good. So I can almost see it either way. But there's a reason why certain filmmakers, Jon Favreau, sometimes when he does stuff, like when he did Iron Man and whatnot, he tries to do as many practical effects as he can before he goes to CGI.
Right.
And that's the simple fact is just because if you can pull it off in a practical effect, it's going to look more real than a CGI effect.
And it will look more real always.
Yeah, exactly.
Always, So yeah, that's the thing. You don't quote unquote date the product quite as readily. By having good stunt takes and by having, stuff like that. Like, blowing up a car is blowing up a car. It's never going to change, So, I was just sitting thinking, Back to the Future, they could just wail on those movies if they made them nowadays, but So
it's,
I'm old. Thank you.
There's a part of me that just wants to, it's like when you take away the practical effects and you make them into CGI, in many cases, you're almost taking the heart out of it.
Mm-hmm.
And but then at the same time, I'm a big fan of the CGI when it comes to certain other effects. If you're, Gollum, for example, I think Gollum was a almost perfectly rendered digital creature. But that was a combination of CGI and then, of course, the actor in the suit, doing the movement and getting the eyes and the mouth and everything all right. So
it also depends, though, on the genre I think you're working in.
Agreed.
Well, fantasy. Yes, the better the effect
to a certain extent.
The better that the movie is going to come across. Space operas with ships and lasers and fights. Yes, the better the effects. Now, you come all the way back down to earth and do a quote unquote street level. I'll take my 70s and 80s kung fu movies and I'll put those up against any kung fu movie you make now.
Yeah.
And like Crouching Tiger standing on the blade when they were fighting. And so it looks cool. But back in the 70s, they did stuff like that then, too.
Yeah.
They called it wire working and it looked different, but it worked and it worked just fine for what you were trying to do there.
Yeah.
So, all you're doing is you're wanting to reproduce these books so that the people have access to them now. In my mind, there is no reason to have to change it. You don't need to fix anything because none of it is broken. It's not,
Yeah. Recoloring it to, you're not going to make somebody want to read it more because you've used a modern coloring process on it. It's like people are going to look at it and they're either going to know right away, oh, well, they've used a modern coloring process. And I guess I do want to read it. No, it's.
I don't think it.
I kind of equate that for me. I equate it with some of the bands I used to. I grew up listening to. It's you listen to for example. I'll use Motley Crue for an example. Their very first album before they got big was done on a shoestring budget.
Okay,
and so it doesn't have all the fancy effects and all that crap on it, but it sounds raw and it sounds just in your face and awesome. And then you compare it to, maybe something they did in the early 90s and they just don't sound as hard, or there was one of my favorite songs from the band Kiss is a song called I Love It Loud. Mm-hmm. And it's got this certain sound on the drums. It's just kind of this loud, booming, almost echoey kind of sound to it. And that's from like really early 80s. Well, in the 90s, they put together this compilation album and they said, we're going to add I Love It Loud to it, but we're going to remix it. And they ruined the crap out of that song because they they turned all that thundering boom of the bass drum. They made it sound like just like a wimpy bass drum. And it's like, no, that may be what you're doing now, but you destroyed this song. You took what made this song special and you just threw it in the garbage. And I think that's what they do when they try to update these old comics for reprint.
I agree. And just throwing out there, having brought up Kiss, I find that I prefer their concert recordings better than I do a lot of their in-studio stuff, because the energy comes through from those recordings.
Yeah.
Normally I prefer the nice structured harmonic in-tune studio to a live production for most anybody. But there's just something about a Kiss concert in the early 80s, man, that, when they recorded that sound, they captured something else too. And so, when you hear those, it really comes through.
To go on a quick tangent, their third album was that was their first live album, Kiss Alive. And their first album didn't sell very well. Their second album didn't sell very well. And yet they were selling all kinds of tickets for their shows. And people were coming out in droves to see them live.
Right.
And that's when they decided, let's do a live album. This is probably going to be the last thing that we record. Let's give them, what they're getting as close as we can, what they're getting in the shows. And that's the album that ended up just really starting the whole thing for them. And
they were.
Now they did, they'll be the first to admit it. They did, it's not all fully live. They did come back into the studio and add some stuff to it, to fill it out a bit more. So you did get a little bit more of that, in your chest when you're listening to it, but it's still live. And I've seen them 4 times live, twice with the makeup and twice without. And there's nothing quite like a Kiss show. Granted, if you've seen one Kiss live show, you've seen them all.
Oh,
they do practically the same thing. They almost created a formula, but it's still, it's good stuff.
All right. Anything else you want to add?
I don't. Nah, nothing else.
All right. Well, folks, we do want to thank everyone for listening to the episode, this episode in particular of the Superman Super Show. If you do want to drop us a line, you can do that at the supermansupershow@gmail.com. If you want to help the show in any way, there's a number of ways you can rate us. You can review us, but just more than anything else, tell somebody. If you like the show, tell them you like it. Give them the name of the show and they can do a little Google search and they can find us. We post on Twitter. We have forums. We do all the stuff to try to help people find us as easily as they can. But
text them the link. If you got a buddy that listens to all their podcasts on Apple Podcasts, grab the freaking link to our show on Apple Podcasts and text it to them. Boom. You've made it easier for them to find us.
There you go. And that's, that's the key. People, and I don't say this in a mean way, but people don't necessarily want to work to do something that they enjoy.
Yep.
So the easier that you can make it for them to get something that hopefully they'll enjoy, I think the more that they will be willing to do that. So until next week, I'm Ed saying goodbye. And here is Steven saying maybe the same thing.
Maybe the same thing.
All right. And that's all from us, folks. We will catch you later.
Bye. We want to thank you for listening to this episode of the Superman Super Show. Questions and comments can be directed to the Superman Super Show @gmail.com. If you enjoyed the show, you can help to boost our presence online by leaving a rating or review on your favorite podcast app. The Superman Super Show is a presentation of Steven or Else Media. For more nerdy content just like this, check out stevenorelse.com or just use the link in your show notes. Superman is a registered trademark of DC Comics and was created by Jerry Siegel and Joe Shuster.
Superman is a copyrighted feature appearing in Action Comics magazine.
Superman's bad. I mean, he was bad.
Kroger Delivery makes it easy to do your holiday shopping in a jingle. There might be a lot on your to-do list, but thanks to Kroger Delivery, you can get everything you need delivered straight to your door at the same great prices you'd find in store. Our refrigerated trucks always ensure that your groceries arrive fresh. And right now, you can save $20 on your first order of $75 or more and get free delivery with a Boost membership. Restrictions apply. See site for details. Kroger, fresh for everyone.